So I would just like to introduce Dr. Lindsay Dougal is from Jamstick, so he's a senior staff scientist. Ambassador Mudgal Lindsay was our ambassador in Mauritius, where the big announcement was done about the Sagar vision by the Honorable Prime Minister. Sir has been very closely associated with policy making on the blue economy in India. And he's been our mentor for a while. And as I had mentioned in the beginning, Sir has been very kind to be part of our publication on the Marine Spatial Planning. So, and Sir, Mehul Sangikar is a Pune boy to say, but he's been in Japan. He was earlier in Singapore, National University of Singapore. He's been instrumental in designing AUVs there. And then last 15 years, you are in Japan now, Mehul?
17 years now.
Wow. So he's done his master's and PhD from Tokyo University, but he's been a very active researcher, and now he is on 1 feet in Tokyo University and the bigger
1
fit
feet in
feet.
Jamstack.
Yes, so yeah.
Interesting mix.
Yes. Sir.
All right, I think it's time that we start.
Yeah.
So good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you to today's webinar, which is titled Marine Spatial Planning and UDA Framework, Navigating the Future of Safe, Secure, and Sustainable Growth for All in the Indian Ocean Region, which is being held on this auspicious occasion of World Maritime Day. My name is Nishtha, and I head the Communications and Outreach at the Maritime Research Center, and I'll be your host for today's session, which is being organized by the Maritime Research Center in association with NirDhwani Technology Pvt Limited. Today's event is especially significant because it is being held in the commemoration of the World Maritime Day 2025. The World Maritime Day is observed annually under the auspices of International Maritime Organization, and it serves as a moment for the global community to reflect on the importance of shipping and maritime activities being held across the world. It also allows us to focus on the specific theme that highlights the urgent maritime priorities. This year's theme is Our Ocean, Our Obligation, and Our Opportunity. Our ocean reminds us that the seas are a shared global resource. They're critical for trade, livelihood, biodiversity, and climate stability. The term Our Obligation emphasizes on our duty to manage and protect the marine environments and the blue economy to enhance innovation. And Our Opportunity points to the immense potential that the sea holds. So this theme very deeply resonates with the subject of today's discussion, which is marine spatial planning and the UDA framework. Together, they provide both a sense of responsibility and the pathway for unlocking opportunities for the future of the Indian Ocean region and beyond. We sincerely thank all our distinguished panelists who have joined us today for their valuable time and contributions going forward. We are confident that this session is going to be very insightful and educational for all of us who are present here. A gentle request to the audience, please keep your microphones muted while the speakers are addressing the audience. For any questions or comments, you can use the chat box so that we can keep the session interactive and engaging. So with that context, let us now move on with the first session of our program. I would now like to invite Dr. Commander Arnav Das, who's the founder and director of the Maritime Research Center, to deliver the introductory remark on the underwater domain awareness framework and set the tone of the webinar. So before he starts, I would like to give a brief introduction about Dr. Das. He's a researcher, maritime strategist, and an entrepreneur. He's the founder and director of MRC, which is working on this unique concept of underwater domain awareness. Dr. Das has served in the Indian Navy for over 2 decades, and he earned his master's and PhD from IIT Delhi while he was serving as a uniformed officer and undertook various research and developmental projects during his 7-year tenure at the institute. And after retiring from the Indian Navy, he worked on the acoustic research laboratory at the National University of Singapore. So with this, I would hand over the mic to Arnav sir for his comments. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nishtha. I think it's a very important occasion, and this time's theme is Our Ocean, Our Obligation, and our opportunities. So that's why I think we at MRC thought it is appropriate for us to also showcase our work on the marine spatial planning. Although the main presentation will be done by my two colleagues. So I just want to flag that we have been working on marine spatial planning uh, on a very, very serious note on two parallel tracks. One is on the policy side, we have come up with a MSP handbook where we have looked at the larger dimension of policy intervention, technology intervention, and capacity and capability building. We are very fortunate that Ambassador Mudgal sir is also very deeply involved in that project. And my colleague Catherine will be presenting in details what we have covered and how we have gone about it. And it's a global document. It's not specific to, although it highlights the tropical challenges and tries to address that aspect, but this is definitely not limited to the Indian Ocean, but it is for the entire global aspect. The second part is to do the real thing of building the digital platform for MSP. So my colleague Sridhar will be presenting that aspect. So, I mean, it's definitely a work in progress because there are so many dimensions to be addressed. And we are very happy to have our, today panel is very, very important, and we're happy to have our friends from Japan. I mean, Jamstick is a very well-known global entity contributing significant to ocean science and technology. So we are very happy to have Dr. Lindsay Dugal and Dr. Mehul Sangikar from Jamstick, and they will be giving their perspective. Dr. Deepak from the National Center for Sustainable Coastal Management will also be giving his comment, and then we'll be expecting the concluding remarks from Mudgal sir, who will give a overarching remark on particularly the work that we have done and also the global geopolitical and geostrategic dimension. So quickly, I want to just highlight how we have been looking at things. I mean, we have multiple researchers working with us on different aspects. I mean, it's a multidisciplinary framework that we work on. So, although we address the tropical challenges, but it's not limited to the tropical waters alone. I mean, what we have found that global research has been largely driven in the temperate and the polar region. And I think we have been focusing on the tropical waters in the sense that the unique tropical challenges can be kind of addressed. So, I mean, today, even when we talk about the Indo-Pacific, it's the tropical waters of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So again, the tropical waters strategically have a significant importance, but I think the research community has not really focused so much on it. So we think that there's a significant opportunity for us to contribute to this area. So typically, when we say the UDA framework, which I will be discussing very quickly, it addresses the policy intervention, technology intervention, and capacity and capability building. I mean, in one sense, I would like to say that MSP is part of the technical or technology intervention. But my recent discussion with some of the diplomats also kind of puts it. So I want to avoid getting into that discussion on what is the hierarchy, whether UDA is a subset of MSP or MSP is a subset of UDA. But I think both of them are very critical tool, I mean, to solve our concerns of the ocean. So this is the framework that we have been working on. I mean, maybe at the cost of repetition, but I thought it's important for us to set the context. So the four sides of the cube that you see represent the stakeholders, and the core is the acoustic capacity and capability building, because for underwater domain awareness, acoustics will remain the key tool or key aspect, and the tropical waters suffer significant degradation in the sonar performance. So it's important that all the stakeholders come together. So we call it pooling of resources and synergizing our effort is required. Then we'll have enough resources for research and innovation so that we can solve global problems. And the second part is when we look at the vertical construct, a lot of sensing is required, then analysis and regulation. So this actually gives a very structured approach. I mean, I call it a comprehensive, structured and inclusive approach. So, I mean, all the stakeholders are addressed and everybody is represented. So I think I'll stop here and hand over to Nishtha back and to take it forward. So I think the UDA driven MSP is a very, very critical aspect that we need to keep in mind. So thank you, Nishtha, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for introducing us to the concept of underwater domain awareness and for framing the important and approaches that are required for maritime governance. Now, moving on, we'll move forward to the next speaker. We have with us Ms. J. Catherine, who heads the research and publication at MRC. And she'll be speaking on the policy dimension of the marine spatial planning in context of the sustainable blue economy. Little bit introduction about Catherine. Like I mentioned that she's the head of research and publication at MRC, where she oversees key projects. She's also the co-editor of UDA Knowledge Center, demonstrating her commitment to knowledge dissemination, capacity building, and sustainable development research. She has a strong interdisciplinary background, holding a master's degree in water sciences from Shiv Nadar University, and she has completed the Young India Fellowship at Ashoka University and holds a BSc honors in physics from St. Stephen's College, University of Delhi. Over to you, Catherine. Catherine, you have to unmute yourself. Okay, but we can't hear you.
Yeah.
Now you are. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Catherine. I'm going to be speaking about the Marine Spatial Handbook that we have prepared and which is based on underwater domain awareness framework. So starting off, I think everyone here would agree why ocean is important. I have just summarized a few points as to why ocean is important with respect to climate, economy, and security. These interests, though they seem disjoint, they are competing interests as well, which lead to conflicts, fragmentation, and overexploitation. Oceans today act as is very important for climate regulation. It acts as an economic engine, driving a lot of global trade and economic growth. And it anchors security. So maritime security is ensured, it ensures safe passage and resource protection, and it has a lot of connotation for security aspects. So the handbook integrates marine spatial planning and underwater domain awareness for inclusive, sustainable, and secure ocean governance. So we'll see how that pans out in the wide sense of ocean climate, and 100% of it is shared. It doesn't belong to one single country or one single person. So given that, today ocean is important for food security, energy production, global transportation, climate regulation. So the way it was impacting our lives, let's say a decade or 2 decades back, and now is drastically different in all of these aspects: food security, energy production, global transportation, and climate regulation. So the critical challenge here is because it's a shared resource, oceans are vulnerable to overuse, pollution, and unsustainable exploitation. And where does marine spatial planning come into picture? So marine spatial planning is a public process wherein you expect transparency, you expect inclusivity while making such plans. And also we take into consideration all the spatial and temporal components of human activities and ecological activities. And then we also look at how to allocate the resources that we have mapped and analyzed to make sure there is equity, there is sustainability in how we are using it. So the key benefits of marine spatial planning is reducing conflicts, enhancing coordination among stakeholders, balancing different objectives, economic, ecological, and social, ensuring sustainable use of marine resources. The marine spatial planning concept has evolved through the years. From the Cold War era, where the major concerns are military and security, but as the plaguing war-like situation diminished, and we entered into the um, globalization era, which is post 1990s, we started to recognize, and based on more scientific developments, the ecological limits and the importance of biodiversity protection. The development from the 1990s has led us today to various concepts which need integrated framework, combining security, economy, and ecology through blue economy and climate change actions. So the historical drivers or the traditional conventional drivers have been security and territorial disputes, environmental degradation awareness, climate change urgency, economic development pressures. But today we have become, we need more specific integration, the modern integration, which are the economic growth and job creation that needs to be integrated into the plans, make the environmental protection and restoration is properly integrated. And we also take into account the social equity and community needs, along with the national and regional sector. Though they seem very similar to the historical ones, the way the geopolitical dimensions have evolved are starkly different. The scope of MSP in the modern ocean governance actually encompasses these four major components. So the marine industries, the economic factors, the policy integration, making sure that various obstacles and setbacks are taken care of at the policy level, global, regional, and national levels. Making sure the climate action is aligned with your global SDGs and ESG parameters. And making sure the conflict resolution mechanisms are properly put into place. And such marine spatial plans can take three different forms, which could be a global form, a regional form, and a national form. And each of them have their own challenges and opportunities. So the global MS, this is something where we make a comparison between what the Western approaches have been and what the global South needs. So the Western approaches, because of the economic superiority, technological superiority traditionally, uh, has been hardware intensive, and has had a more of a temperate focus and more resource intensive. But what the global South needs is a more of a low cost solution, adaptive models, and tropical customization. And within this context, it is essential to avoid Cold War era legacy systems and unsuitable frameworks that don't address these needs, the community needs, the stakeholder needs, the resources and environmental conditions of developing nations and tropical marine environments. So the challenges and opportunities in resource-constrained regions, which is typically the global south, include the limited resources, fragmented governance, and awareness gap. The local knowledge and the skilling initiatives, which can drive sustainable and inclusive growth, needs to be integrated into all of our plans. The opportunities that we are looking at is innovation, given the population, growing use of AI and ML, and the talented workforce that we have, the community engagement that is possible because there's a lot of places to explore, there's a lot of economic possibilities, digital transformation, regional collaboration. to share resources, expertise, and best practices to come out of the bubble and make sure that the regional collaboration and partnerships and various avenues for that are explored. So UDA, the conceptual framework, as Dr. Das has already explained, the stakeholders, the way we take up the projects and the way we address the issues and come up with solutions is something that the framework very nicely encompasses. So the 5 pillars that we look at when we want to take up these is what is the strategy, what is the innovation that we are looking at, and how can this contribute to the skilling of the people, and what kind of knowledge base we are generating, the accessibility of the knowledge, and what is the fundamental research that we need to take up to make sure that the tropical customization which we are talking about can be put in place. So the whole the concept is, first you see, making sure the sensing and the monitoring technologies are in place and the data collection systems are properly, more community aligned, and making sure that the security issues are taken care of, and to understand the data to make sure that we recognize the pattern. And this can vary from place to place. For example, for the Bay of Bengal region, we are more concerned, let's say, about shipping or shipping accidents, or disaster preparedness. So we understand what kind of data we are looking at, making sure that we are using such, we are taking away from the generic data and trying to make sure that it is more context specific, location specific, and caters to the need of the people. So that is to understand and to share that information with the public through apps and various technological factors that we can think of. So the Indo-Pacific is, in this particular context, a very important player. So it is at the epicenter of the global power balance and strategic maritime importance in the modern era. But the technologies that we currently use, which is the sonar systems, suffer 60% degradation, and which requires, and which is not addressed properly. And 40% of the global trade passes through the Indo-Pacific, and it is home to about 3.5 billion people. So given these conditions and even rich biodiversity, demographic advantage, strategic choke points, how India and the countries in the Indian Ocean region are very specially placed for collaboration and integration and partnership for skilling programs, sharing of sophisticated analytical capabilities, comprehensive digital transformation, etc. So the roadmap of the handbook that Maritime Research Center has come up with includes these 3 major categories. So what are the policy interventions that you're looking at? What are the technology interventions that we require? And what is the capacity and capability building approach that we should follow? So the policy intervention actually looks at what are the strategic governance frameworks in place and what needs to be changed to remove, let's say, the fragmentation, acting in silos, the ministerial gaps, etc. And how to adapt the tropical conditions methodologies, how to make sure that research is taken up for making sure the technologies are robust, and multi-stakeholder basically tells you the modeling and simulation, the advanced modeling and simulation that we can perform to make sure that it is more cost effective, and we end up with strategic decision making. And then we also have the acoustic monitoring systems. That because ocean is something where without acoustics you cannot perform anything. So you're blind inside the ocean if you don't know your acoustics. And acoustics vary from different regions within the oceans, the shallow waters, the tropical regions, etc. So how do you address that? How do you monitor those systems, and how do you make sense of that? So customizing your acoustic monitoring systems to your to the place that you are in is essential. And the tropical specific technologies. So once you understand all of that, what are the technologies that you would recommend? And the final is the capacity and capability building. So there are layers of capacity and capability building approaches, which I'll be talking about in the later slides. So each of these areas builds upon the other and creating a comprehensive approach to sustainable ocean governance, addressing various unique challenges and opportunities in resource-constrained regions. So the policy interventions which I've already mentioned include the institutional barriers, how bureaucratic challenges need to be overcome, because MSP is a very, it's not a new concept, but it's not, readily adapted in this part of the world yet. So we need to make sure that the legal and the policy uh, platforms that we need for making it work needs to be thought of properly, should be backed by proper research, should be debated, and the merits of, let's say, the underwater domain awareness framework, which this handbook actually talks about, taken into consideration. So the UDA integration, minimizing fragmentation. So UDA actually helps you minimize fragmentation. It improves transparency because your data and the way you are dealing with the data analytics and taking it to the different stakeholders, it's all properly structured to the UDA work. So the tropical focus also needs to be considered because even the policymakers, are largely unaware of how important such focus is while designing our policies. The Indian Ocean leadership and also making sure that in the Indian Ocean region, India having one of the largest coastlines can play a very important role, and also because a lot of trade passes through this, we need to make sure that we understand what is happening around our shores and making sure that our neighboring countries understand and and are aligned with each other in terms of what they are thinking without competing interests. So the leadership plays a very important role, and the Indian Ocean region can can become like a very global leader for various regions around the world. So also aligning whatever we are doing in MSP with ESG and SDG is also important when we talk about the policy impacts. And finally, impact assessment, which could be both environmental and the economic impact assessment, should also be integrated into policy interventions. Technology intervention is something that my colleague Sridhar is going to expand on. But to summarize, we are actually promoting the advanced modeling solutions, which is cost-effective planning and strategic decision-making for complex ocean environments. So what we are looking at here is customized underwater channels and ambient noise models designed for the tropical conditions. So one way that we do this is through the source path receiver model, which is sophisticated signal processing and acoustic analysis of in the tropical regions, and making sure, for example, let's say some port is coming up, shipping lanes are passing through somewhere, what is the impact that is going to have on the of that area or the other human activities that are going on in the area. So understanding and implementing proper source path receiver model plays a very important role here. The second one is data analytics indigenization, making sure that the context is understood, and without generic prescription, we look at what different problems in different areas would need based on the data that is collected by themselves. So establishing proper monitoring systems in that area and making sure that the capability to analyze data is also available within that particular community or that particular local government, because having the analytical power is something that can change the way somebody holds the power to take decisions. So if you are able to analyze the situation that you are in based on, let's say, indigenous knowledge also, and with these modern information, you are able to take decisions which favors your situation without any other external vested interest. So that is very important there. And although modeling and simulation provides you with a particular model, how do you trust that? So for that, what we suggest is that we do validation, because we don't want to get into all of the hardware intensive programs. We will after the modeling and simulation based models are set up based on the data available, we take up the validation step, which makes sure that our results are accurate before we do the final deployment. So to make all of this possible, we need the workforce which is capable of understanding the importance of acoustics, plus all the other important knowledge related to, let's say, marine biotechnology, marine energy transition, etc. So all of those different capabilities are also required when we take up this process of marine spatial planning. So the critical challenge is that we do not have the expertise, we do not have enough people, but it is possible to take it up. And because we have so many students graduating every year, and we have so many people working in the government, who have the power but do not have the proper resources to undertake such crucial decisions. So the capacity building that we have planned ends up giving you analytics specialists, data scientists, technical specialists in acoustic engineering, field deployment and operations team specialists. So these are the different categories of people that, and we have designed courses for catering to the needs of all of these different portfolios. And so the innovation ecosystem for building this capacity is three-tiered. One is the hardware, to make sure that the sensing capabilities are in place. And the second is the software, which is the analytical tools. And the hybrid is sharing the hardware and the software knowledge with different stakeholders through different knowledge sharing platforms. So our the whole system is how you take up the outreach initiatives, and making sure you engage with all of those stakeholders, and making sure you sustain all of your efforts through long-term capacity maintenance and implementing the solutions on ground. So these are some of the pictures from our field visit to Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Kerala coast. So here we've met with fisherfolk who shared with us their issues, the lack of the major issue was they understood technology, but they didn't have the proper technology that catered to their problems. So once we shared what we had developed, the APY analysis tool, the sediment management framework, and even the shipping radiated noise tool, we received some positive responses from them about how that could help them understand their marine activities. These people are mostly involved in seaweed cultivation, fishing, etc. And even our the internal team, which was not able to visit, we arranged for a small webinar for them, where we explained to them about the sustainable blue economy. So it's not like about us imparting knowledge; it's also about getting there. So if I talk to them about sustainable blue economy, they already know what blue economy is in their local context. So understanding that, plus connecting it to what the global definitions are, what the missing components are from our side and from their side, and coming up with a joint solution is something that was the output of this particular field visit. And we also validated some of our emerging tools. our research fellows and interns were involved in this initiative. So the key takeaways for ocean governance from the handbook is the essential integration between MSP and the UDA, the convergent strategy between policy, technology, and acoustic capability building, the tropical specialization, and the need for inclusive growth, making sure the community management and strategic global cooperation initiatives are aligned with each other. So the recommendation and the future outlook for the policymakers is to make sure that the integrated governance approaches bridges traditional maritime management with modern technological capabilities. For technocrats, it's to prioritize modeling and simulation for the obvious reasons which I've already explained. For researchers, it is to build capacity in tropical acoustic science and develop region-specific solutions for underwater domain challenges.
Right. That was Catherine. So those were the updates and the presentation that were made by Catherine. So I'd like to thank Catherine for explaining to us the MSP handbook that she's been working on for a very long time now, and for the insightful policy perspective, which helps ground our discussion on governance, regulatory framework, and institutional imperatives. Next, we are pleased to have Mr. Sridhar Prabhuraman, who's the Deputy Director at MRC Pune, to present on the technology intervention and innovations in MSP, especially for the tropical marine environments. Brief introduction about Sridhar. He brings over 6 years of experience in the underwater acoustics at MRC, and in his current role, he oversees the engineering and leads the pioneering projects at MRC. These projects aim to enhance maritime situational awareness and support sustainable management of marine resources. Over to you, Sridhar.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And while my colleague, I think there were some issues with that, but I think it's a good segue into what I'm about to present, more so from the perspective of technology intervention that is required for marine spatial planning. The idea here, and as I'll keep explaining in the upcoming slides, is that what we need as a country, specifically in the global south, is more so from the perspective of modeling and simulation driven work, which includes analysis and data sharing, and essentially a tool that connects multiple organizations together and avoids creating siloism. But before we get into that, and before we try to identify how a tool or a technology in essence helps us solve problems, let's look at the problems that we currently have. These are just two examples. There are much more, but we can see in the past there have been instances like, for example, with the Birmingham Port project that happened. There was a massive amount of protest that was staged after the construction of the port because that led to a lot of accelerated coastal erosion. All the communities were displaced. The fishing zones got displaced. There was a large scale dredging that happened for that particular port construction, which ended up destroying the complete ecosystem in the region. And a similar one, but a kind of slightly with a different objective, due to erosions happening in the coastlines. I think this happened back in Tamil Nadu. They ended up placing some drawings and seawalls at the end of seabed. What that did, then that kind of solution completely ignored sediment dynamics on how the sediment flows. What that did, it just shifted the problem downshore to a different region and did not really fix the problem per se. Now, the World Bank report from 2020 on enhancing coastal and ocean resource efficiency project that specifically mentions that one of the biggest problems that we have is that multiple agencies are operating in silos with unshared data sets, leading to uncoordinated decisions. And because it is a disjoint approach that we are taking, there's a lot of information gap. We are missing a lot of early warnings. We are not able to formulate an integrated marine plan due to limited data sharing and technical capacity. So every organization, every agencies work in silos without having an understanding of what's happening in the other side of the spectrum. A port construction will not have an understanding of what's happening from a marine conservation perspective, and so on and so forth. So what we are kind of suggesting in terms of the technology intervention for MSP is to solve such kind of a problem, a platform essentially that converts raw observations into actionable insights for policy, conservation, and industry. And it goes beyond a static. So marine spatial planning as a concept, when it was introduced, if I remember correctly, in the early 90s, it was introduced when the Coral Reef project happened for the Great Barrier Reef in Australia. It started from there, and ever since then, it has been substantially been improving, but still it remains to be a static map. The idea being that with all the data that you obtain, be it AIS data or ports in the region or offshore oil rigs and platforms, you essentially map everything, all the static data onto a particular tooling, and that allows you to have a broader overview of what's happening in the what are the different resources that are present in the ocean. What we are suggesting is something a bit different. What we're suggesting is that beyond just having a static map, we need to analyze the data, we need to take actionable inputs out of the data, and then we need to showcase that. So instead of just showcasing AIS data in the region, we essentially derive shipping noise that is derived from the AIS data. Instead of just showcasing acoustic habitat, instead of just showcasing, sorry, marine habitat, let's say for whales, sea turtles, we also capture the migratory patterns, we also capture the migratory corridors. And these information, when come together, they provide actionable insights, because you can effectively see how the shipping noise is directly impacting the marine habitat, and so on and so forth. So what we are actually looking at, and as Sir mentioned, this is something that we've been working on, although still in preliminary stages. There are a few components that are left to be addressed here, but idea here is that we want to create a marine spatial planning decision support tool which goes beyond the existing MSP tools that are available, at least from the Indian subcontinent perspective, where you get actionable data, and those data, when I say again, it does come to a point where not every information is already available in terms of raw recordings. So not every information can always be obtained in raw recordings. So a lot of these things are actually simulated. And I'll draw back from what Catherine has mentioned there, in the sense that being a global south, we cannot always end up spending in blanket exposure of hydrophones or sensors. We cannot put up that kind of money. So we need something that can work for us. We need something that can work for a solution that will work for our subcontinent. So what we're looking for, looking as is a single system where we have all the different planning layers coming together, being habitat suitability model, marine biodiversity, in all the different kinds of noise calculated and showcased in the map, wind noise, rain noise, shipping noise, and a lot of different things like pipelines and cables, in order to understand what kind of risks and what kind of mitigation practices we need to take for undersea cables that are flowing through the region, if at all we want to perform kind of drilling or offshore oil rig construction. So a single platform that showcases all that information. And deriving back from what the examples that I showed before, it is not that the agencies are not making an effort to, or it is not that they're undermining the impact of the work that is being happening, but rather that there is no broader overview between two different agencies of what's happening and how it might impact the other agency, and that is what we are trying to bridge here. So what we are here representing as a simulation-based MSP has two transformative advantages. One is dynamism, so it will continuously adapt to changing marine conditions and stakeholder needs. And second is the impact modeling, which is probably the more important aspect of it, which allows us to identify a what-if scenarios. So if you provide AIS data and taking all the other aspects into consideration, and if you overlay that on top of a habitat map, you can see what kind of noise level is there in the region. And if you provide a different set of AIS data, which essentially has different shipping lanes, so we're trying to shift the shipping lanes a bit, and that can instantly, you can see and visualize what kind of noise levels are there again because of the shifted shipping lane. And this kind of project is something that has happened in the past as well, although not in such kind of a scale. I remember off the coast of Sri Lanka, they identified that the blue whales were there was collision of ships with blue whales, and they identified that by shifting the shipping lane by 15 nautical miles, they were able to reduce the risk of collisions by around 95% for the blue whales. So it is definitely an action item that we need to take as a country as well. So what we are trying to showcase here in simulation-based MSP is we gather, so it is supposed to be enabled with real-time and historical data streams. So all kind of biodiversity, habitat data, AIS data, human activities, infrastructure, ports, cable, defense, everything that comes in there. And we place that on top of simulation engines. These simulation engines, again, it varies from application to application, depending upon what we are looking at. If we are, let's say, for example, ship noise estimation, we are looking at feeding in AIS data, and then we are grabbing the sound speed data based of temperature, salinity, pressure. We are taking sediment type, what kind of sediment is there to identify the absorption coefficient and so on. We put that through a mathematical model, be it for India, probably it will be a parabolic equation based models that will allow us to estimate better, and so on and so forth. And that then you put it through an impact analysis and scenario testing, where you can create different scenarios and identify what kind of impact that is being generated, and all of that being represented in a decision support interface, where we extract information out of what we have analyzed and showcase it to the stakeholders for their consultation. And that, again, this a crucial part of this, what we are making is a community engagement aspect, where as a community, be it fisher folks or coastal or policy people or everyone, they can engage with the tool, they can provide data, they can extract information, public APIs that can be used along with other such kind of tools. Let's say some digital twins or something that needs to gather information from us, a public APIs that can be allowed to extract information through that and ingest into their own tooling for better identification and visualization and so on. So that is the kind of a broader approach we are looking at when we look at the MSP as a digital tool. Now, the foundation for any such kind of tool is to be able to recognize the large amount of information that we need to process, the whole ETL pipeline or extract, transform, and load pipeline that we need to establish for that. Because depending upon the application, currently the MSP tool that we're generating consists of 7 different modules. Each of the different modules have a lot of different data requirement that we extract. Let's say for urban flood mapping that we have done for Brahmaputra regions, we're looking at identifying the rainfall, the digital elevation model, the drainage data of that particular region, the land use, all the so on and so forth. If you're looking at acoustic habitat mapping, we need to understand the chlorophyll level that will tell us which habitat is more suitable. Then oxygen maps, the primary productivity regions for that, sea surface temperature, and so on and so forth. So all of this information, depending upon the different models we are ingesting, and we are essentially creating an ETL pipeline that will then transform it into what independent applications would require. And then, so it's not one tool which does 7 different parts of the work. These are basically 7 different backend services which essentially perform their own computation. It sends the data to one particular tool, and that's what we are trying to promote here. In terms of showcasing from an application perspective, where it would look like, so imagine if we have a storyboard, a scenario where you want to identify that what kind of for a given shipping in the region, what kind of habitat are we trying to look at? Like, how is the habitat getting impacted because of that? So you can essentially overlay the AIS data of the current AIS data. It could be a cumulative noise map, or it could be an instantaneous, depending upon the need, depending upon what we are looking at. So yeah, so we've got the AIS data, then we can overlay a map of shipping noise on top of that, which is again computed dynamically. A part of this computation dynamically, again, and I'll talk about it as we move forward, is that this was not something that we were able to do because of I would consider because of less pronounced usage of AI as a model. But today, with use of neural networks, so we basically replaced a parabolic equation model. So we basically created a neural network model which is suitable for the specific Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, and some southern part of IOR, which is trained upon the data that we have collected, as well as some data populated using the PRAM model that the transmission loss data that we populated using the PRAM model. And what that allows us to do is that instead of the computational time comes down drastically. So instead of it taking instead of taking it n times to perform some computation, you are reducing it to log n, and so on and so forth. So the computation times come down drastically. Definitely, there is a trade-off with accuracy. However, depending upon the application, the trade-off is acceptable provided you have a more dynamic mapping generation that is happening there. So for most of the applications that we identified, the trade-off is substantially like 5 to 10% of trade-off in accuracy is acceptable from what we saw. Now from the noise map that we essentially have, we then overlay that with the acoustic habitat map. Again, this is something that we generated using a Maxent model that performs the habitat suitability mapping. Let's say for green turtles, which is mostly mostly having a habitat near the coastal regions, we can see that there is a significant overlap between so some of the areas where there's an increased shipping, as well as the areas where the green turtles can be found, or a habitat where the green turtles can be found. Yeah, and what we're trying to look at here essentially is not just about showcasing the habitat at that particular instant, but also being able to identify the migratory patterns of the species. Right now we're looking at green turtles, blue whales, and dolphins, and what is the migratory pattern with respect to different seasons? What is a migratory pattern with respect to different environmental parameters, and how that helps us to identify all the projects, all the economic projects that we are taking up. And in terms of the analysis, so once we have this kind of a data, once we have performed that overlapping, we can give more actionable insights to the user instead of just saying that, okay, you have the shipping and you have a habitat map. You can extract the shipping noise and you can perform that overlapping analysis and identify that 94% of the habitat is between the green turtle and the shipping is overlapping, and so on and so forth. Now, of course, shipping noise is not the only aspect that we're looking at. Sediment management is also an extremely important component here. We have done some work in terms of data collection and sediment classification. We've developed a model for sediment classification for freshwater system as well as the tropical water systems. The idea here again is that all these components will come together in terms of sediment management. Sediment dynamics affect the estuaries, river mouths, and shipping channels globally. So it is extremely important that we identify it. We need to understand the flow of the sediment to be able to understand what is the type of sediment. We can perform a sediment classification, and what is the usage of that sediment. A clay silt will have a different usage as compared to, let's say, just a clay or a sandy clay sediment type. So being able to understand that, being able to understand the sediment transportation allows us to plan better, as I showcased with the example of the Puducherry coastal erosion project that took up. Shipping noise we've already spoken about. We have done some work on top of that for noise and vibration studies. Skip that one. Acoustic habitat mapping. Again, so the marine biodiversity, it goes beyond just the three aspects of green turtles, blue whales, and dolphins. We are looking at other aspects like such as what are the different fishing zones, what are the different fisheries, identifying those, and creating models that can help us identify the migratory patterns and establish the regions of those particular turtles. And this is not just about one part, again, repeating it again and again, but it's not just about estimating that at one instant, but creating a tool that will help us identify the migratory patterns and help us identify the localization of such kind of species based upon their characteristics. And that's where the modeling and simulation comes into picture, where we are looking at the chlorophyll content in the water. We're looking at other parameters that helps us identify what are the regions where these marine species are to be found. Environmental impact and aquaculture. Environmental impact more so from the perspective of urban flood mapping is something we're integrating into the MSP tool. Again, it involves hydrodynamic modeling using the digital elevation model, the rainfall data, the drainage system in the region, and so on and so forth. So that allows us to create such kind of a simulation which allows us to identify what kind of regions are going to be potentially flooded, which amongst that region is affected by a cropland, and which of the regions that are being affected is an urban affected region, and so on and so forth. This is extremely crucial for any kind of mapping or risk management from a risk management perspective. Area production and yield analysis. Now, shrimps, Now, we are one of the largest exporters of shrimp in the country, and it contributes significantly towards the blue economy. We created a simple regression model. Again, a lot of these solutions do not require us to have extreme computations because of the aspect of simulations, but again, that also because of the usage of machine learning and regression models that we can use to identify these. Now, one of the notable things we identified with our postal visits was that a large subset of farmers believe that increasing the stocking density directly increases the total biomass that they receive from production. So the idea for them was they try to increase the stocking density of the pond. In the pond, they add as much amount of shrimps as possible, increase the stocking density. But they do not have this idea that how much amount, what are the different kind of parameters that allows us for a better growth. So we created a regression model and integrated that, in which as a user, as a farmer, you can essentially feed in parameters, the temperature, the stocking density, the salinity, the pH, the dissolved oxygen. And what we end up doing is we end up predicting what kind of growth are we looking at, what kind of survival percentage and biomass are we looking at. And we established a study on top of the work that we had done on that. But this is again an important aspect of marine spatial planning, where we enable the community to to increase their productivity. Maritime safety and security is another element that we are adding. We have so most of the data that we obtain from SAR images, satellite data, being able to identify the ships that are present in the region, what are the different classes of the ships, and overlapping that with the shipping noise. Essentially, so using that and the satellite AIS data, it allows us to identify which of the ships have their AIS transponder disabled. Now, again, the accuracy takes a beat when we are looking at satellite, considering the fact that there might be some classified vessels who will not turn the transponders on, and of course that also applies to fishing vessels which are lower than a certain gross tonnage. But at the same time, from a cost-effective solution perspective, this is something that works tremendously in our favor, as compared to the existing solutions that we have. And of course, having that mapping of all the undersea cables, and also having the data of seismic activities and seismic events, it allows us to identify what exactly is going to get impacted in terms of a calamity, and that helps us for better risk management. Right now, so while we have all of this, the idea is also to use AI for estimating, or to make the forecasting aspect better. So AI-driven flood forecasting using hydrometry. Again, I spoke about how we've used neural network for estimation of transmission loss, creating a model for that. Sediment transport modeling, again, AI-assisted plume dispersion is something we're looking at. Vessel path prediction, it's a very common problem that has been solved in the past, but integrating that with a broader component of marine spatial planning gives give all the different elements in a single tool. And that's what we are aiming at with this particular tooling that we've created. So I'd like to end with this message that for India, technology-driven MSP is not just a best practice, it's a strategic necessity. Again, borrowing from what Catherine has already mentioned, we have extreme variability. Our coast faces a high variability in climate and biodiversity. There's a seasonal fishing, there is festive tourism, things that do not even depend upon that cannot be scientifically explained, in the sense that you'll have tourism that happens during some festival seasons, you'll have fishing activities that will be happening during some festival season, regardless of whether they obtain a good catch or not. These things needs to be integrated into a system when we look at any kind of policy making, and the MSP tool that we're creating is specifically from that perspective, that community engagement comes into picture, where we take all of that into consideration. And again, from a resource constraint perspective, India cannot afford a blanket deployment of expensive monitoring systems. Simulation-based MSP offers a very cost-effective solution from that perspective. All the data that we have, in terms of, it's not that we do not collect data, it's just that the data that we have is spread across different agencies. So having a single tool where all the agencies can come and interact together, can provide, that then can upload data, and then have that kind of a community engaged data sets, allows us to think from a better and a holistic policy overview. And it also, from considering the governance complexities, like the MOES and MOFCC authorities have mandates that are overlapping in these aspects. And taking into consideration the new regulations brought up, not the new regulations, but the IMO regulations on reducing the noise level and improving the habitat in general. It is being enforced more and more as we throughout the years, throughout the upcoming years, and we as a country, I think we need to take that up seriously. And MSP tooling or a decision support tool is extremely crucial for us to implement the marine spatial planning. Right. With that, I will wrap up my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Sridhar, for the compelling presentation and for taking us all through the MSP tool that the internal team is, developing over the course of time. So with this, we have culminated the section where the presentations were there, and now we'll move on to the next segment of the webinar, wherein we'll hear the remarks from the dignitaries who joined us today. Each will share their reflection and perspective on MSP and UDA and the sustainable blue economy, and also talk about the work that they've done in these domains over the years. First, we have with us Dr. Mehul Sangekar, who is a senior research fellow at the Japan Agency for Marine Earth Science and Technology, short for JANSTEC, long for JANSTEC Tokyo. So over to you, Dr. Mehul.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. First of all, thank you, Dr. Das, for inviting me. We just met Dr. Das a couple of weeks back in Tokyo. He visited us in Jamstack. It was a very nice visit. And yeah, it's really nice that I could hear about the progress, what you're doing at MRC. Also, thank you, Catherine and Sridhar, for all the updates. Very nice work. So just to, I guess, I have been in Jamstack only for 5 years. Dougal has been in Jamstack for a lot longer. So he will tell you a bit more. But Jamstack, for those who don't know, stands for Japan Agency for Marine Earth Science and Technology. We are actually a Japanese National Research Institute. And we do all kind of technology, development, but mostly also a lot of marine science, including biology, mineral exploration, geology, climate change, plastic pollution, etc., etc., etc. So, but most of our work, mine and Dougal is actually doing more on marine animals, plankton, like especially jellyfish. And my work especially has been on developing tools for imaging of plankton and other animals, such as tools for looking at very, very small animals, like jellyfish or fish eggs, etc., as well as looking at large animals on the seafloor or in the mid-water column. So yeah, we are a bit different. We haven't really worked so much on marine acoustics, but we work more on a marine imaging point of view. So yeah, not similar, but we also have the same issue that we usually end up with a lot of data, especially from a marine visual environment. We have a lot of data from the seafloor, we have a lot of data from the midwater, we have data from big animals, small animals, as well as recently with all our new sensors, we have data for very, very small plankton, which are like millimeter or micrometer resolution. And how do we all put it together? I mean, we have our own annotation pipeline where when we record a lot of videos, we go through them manually, and now we are trying to train some AI for detection of these animals in the videos. And then there are certain platforms such as Ecotaxa where we can upload all these images. It's like a worldwide consortium of all these images which get uploaded, and people are building models to actually identify them. But there's not so much work on taking all that data and making some meaning out of it, like what you're trying to do with your acoustic data. That's something which each one does separately. Yeah, so one thing, it's actually a very nice platform what you're trying to build. I wonder if along with acoustic data, you would also be working towards other forms of data which indicate health of the ocean. I mean, acoustic data is nice, of course, but you can tell a lot about bigger animals, like dolphins and whales and but there's a lot of things happening at a much smaller level, and I think Dougal will tell you about that. He's the man for this. But a lot of health of the ocean can be told also from the state of the plankton, or how much CO2 gets pushed from the air into the ocean depends on the phytoplankton. But to study them, I think you need other information as well, not just acoustics, but some kind of imaging platforms. The problem with these imaging systems is the data is much, much larger than acoustic systems. And how to put it together is going to be a really big challenge. I mean, right now, the data collected is very, very small numbers. For example, even we go to the ocean maybe once a year or twice a year on our ships and collect data with our sensors. But what if we start having these 24/7 sensors in the ocean? I don't know what we're going to do with that data, or how much we're going to be able to process this kind of continuous data. So that is going to be a completely different ball game when it comes to that. But then how to extract meaningful information from that data is another challenge. Like, how do you build algorithms to actually extract either autonomously live or semi-live information about the state of the ocean from this kind of small imaging data? I think is something which hasn't been thought of yet in such a broad perspective. And how to put all that data in a platform like yours, where people can actually combine it with, say, other information like acoustic data, is not well thought of yet. So it's something which is still quite open. But yeah, the other thing I would like to say is, yeah, you're right that data sharing is very important between different agencies. I wonder how easy it is in India itself. Does it happen quite easily that information gets shared between different agencies? Maybe Dr. Das can actually tell me about that, because we find it quite challenging in Japan as well to have information shared. And secondly, is there any format which the data gets shared? Because a lot of times our trouble is that when we go request for data from different groups, they all have their own data formats which are not very standardized, and then you get a data and then we realize, oh, they forgot to log the date, and then the data is absolutely useless because they don't have date in the information, or they have logged temperature without any decimal information, so the information is useless for what you really want to study. So who enforces that the data should be collected in a particular way or a particular manner, or data formats should be standardized between different groups? I wonder if that is something also, as a MRC or as more global, can be, I don't know if it can be enforced, but it can be standardized to some extent, that anybody who uses your tool, anybody who wants to provide data to your tool, should be compelled to use these particular formats or standards of producing data. Like, we are now starting to build certain standards for our data keeping. Like, we have our file structures. We also have a certain headers, for example, which are standardized, so we can use the same file formats for all our internal work. So whenever we get data either from our cruises, we ingest the data in a particular format so that we know it's consistent. And then we are building tools for QA/QC. So before we ingest all the data, we have all the data done QA/QC and ingested. But again, it's very hard for us to force other people to use our formats, because everybody has their own formats and they don't want to listen to anybody else. So it's a tricky situation. But I wonder if that's something, for users of your platform, you could actually say, okay, please at least try to give us something, or try to record your data in a particular way. Or if you build an app to record data, you could keep the same structure of data, so it's easy for you to take the data back from your the clients. Or yeah, that's probably it. And yeah, I think for things which we are good at, like especially visual imaging, plankton imaging, that's something we would be interested to work together, especially when we have a lot of data. We will have to build more interesting algorithms to go through it more automatically, for example, or infer information from it more automatically. I think that's where there is potential for us, I think, to work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you,
Uh,
Mehul. Just to quickly clarify, the MSP platform that we are building is not limited to acoustics. It, of course, will contain all kinds of data, all kinds of aspects will be covered, but it's a work in progress, as I mentioned in the beginning. And you have raised some very critical points about data format. And, actually, I want to also remind you, Mehul, that, this part of the world, field experimental research is not such a common thing. And people like you who go out to sea regularly face these challenges, and you understand. I mean, field validation has its own, so that's the culture we are trying to bring here. And also multidisciplinary work is very important. So, we have been regularly trying to do field work, field data collection. And I mean, in many parts of the world, I've seen that, people are going and collecting data and hoping that they will analyze it sometime. I mean, every set of data, before we go to the next field trip, I think we should first finish kind of, doing the data analytics on the first set. Then only you will know what mistakes you've done. So that's a very, very important thing for us. And, so this platform that we are creating will also, like the whole UDA framework, technology intervention and capacity building would also mean, data standardization in terms of, specification, data formats, and whole lot of, there are so many aspects to be standardized. And unless you create a platform, people don't know where to get on board. So that's something very important. And in terms of capabilities, we do a lot of signal processing. So, and today, even AI platforms take all kinds of data. So, I don't know, conceptually, there is no limit on what kind of data we can handle. It's certainly not limited to just we are doing satellite image processing also. So, how integrated all the different data sets are if you are really serious about solving real world problems. So definitely that is something we are looking at. But it will be a long haul in any case, and we are very much ready for that. Every different aspects. What you all are doing at the macro, at the micro, species level is also very important. That's what will kind of come together to build the larger ecosystem. But how do we kind of stitch multiple layers and
Exactly.
multiple aspects is extremely important. But the process is, I think, more important. There is a lot of research going on across the world, but, can we build a process where, all that can be put together to, really stitch one holistic picture is what is important. So I think what Sridhar has presented, the attempt is that and the UDA framework as such will give a conceptual model on how people can collaborate. See, even people who are funding or, processing projects, they also need to be far more aware of what are the, nuances or what are the challenges. And then only a proper ecosystem can be built. So that's what I would say. Thank you for your comments. I think, this is an ongoing discussion. I think there's a lot more to be spoken about. Nishtha, back to you.
Yeah, right. Sridhar also has something to add, so I'll just quickly call Sridhar to make his comment.
Right, I won't take too much time. Thank you, Mehul sir. I think you're right in all the comments you've made. Format being standardized, that is the expectation when people will upload any data to this tool. Let's say they want to upload temperature data, they have to have it in a particular format for it to work with. But that being said, the beauty of creating that ETL pipeline is that everything actually gets recorded, stored in a database, and you can export it in any format that you wish to. That's the idea that we have there. second point, Arnab sir rightly mentioned that field experiment is not so common in the side. And that's where we are bringing the community engagement aspect. So as a fisherman, if you're going to sea for some fishing, you essentially just mark that region and say that this is a region where we could find a catch, let's say in this season, and then the season, in a different season, it shifted to a different space. And a lot of these information cannot be obtained, again, as I said, because we are a very religious and a cultural country. There are factors that cannot be explained by science as to the season, the time when we go and things like that. And this is something that we also identified when we had that community engagement, as Catherine rightly pointed out, in the Gujarat coastline and so on and so forth. So yes, I think that's the idea. And as you rightly mentioned, there are a lot of, and that is why this becomes a very compelling engineering project. I mean, being an engineer myself, uh, we did face a lot of difficulties with a lot of these things, but there are technologies now available. So this is something that we thought of, that even dynamic estimation of noise map, if we consider, it's a big time complexity problem, because we divide the complete region into small grids of 0.05 degree, 1/4 quarter degree lat long coordinates, and then for each of those quarter degrees we calculate that from 200 kilometers of that radius, how many ships are contributing to that particular degree, and then we perform linear interpolation amongst all the things. So that's, from a mathematical standpoint, it's a computationally expensive problem. However, with the use of AI, it does help us solve that, because once you train a model for a certain region, then it's just predicting, it's not really computing. So that time comes down significantly. So that's the broader idea here. And we have done image analysis. Um, while one of our researchers did that, I do not have complete information on that, but from the perspective of dark ship prediction, we have done significant amount of image analysis using the satellite data for ships. And yes, I mean, we have some capabilities around that. I'm happy to get back to you with that if required on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so
Well,
much.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mehul. While I can see there's a hand raised for a comment or a question, but I think we'll take that up after we are done with the other speakers of today. So moving on, we are honored to have Dr. Dougal John Lindsay, a research scientist at JAMSTEC, with professorship and affiliations in marine sciences. Originally from Australia, Dr. Lindsay is a specialist in midwater ecology and is deeply involved in developing CETO imaging systems and technological methods to study fragile marine life. His work bridges marine ecology, technology, and ocean observations. So over to you, Dr. Lindsay, for your comments.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and I'd like to also thank Sridhar and Catherine for their presentations, very informative and interesting, and Arnab for inviting me to be here. I was very, very impressed by what you've managed to put together there in your system. It seems to be extremely labor intensive to actually put all of that together, and very impressive. I think one of my comments would be, I served as on the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative for the New Technologies Working Group as the head of the working group for many years. And one thing that we did was make ISO standards that people can refer to for, in our case, it was for imaging technologies. This is how you need to do something for a seafloor station doing an environmental impact assessment platform, for example. And we tried various ways to provide standards that would be clear that people could follow. But as Mehul was saying, it's like herding cats. People have their own standards and they don't like to change much. So we kind of moved to trying to develop tools that people would find nice to use, and therefore the de facto standardization is done by when they put their data in your tool. Your digital twin kind of a system correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that people, if they could upload their data, they may not get, it's not being used like to analyze their data at the grassroots, like the people providing the data don't put it in and get back an answer that they want immediately. It's more like a management tool to an overview of everything for the people controlling or looking at the bigger picture. And I'm wondering if having development of some kinds of smaller package tools that would then put an input into your system might be one way to gather more data that you might not otherwise get, because people are more likely to share their data if they're getting some kind of analysis results back from the process of sharing it. Mehul was just talking about ecotaxa, which is being used for plankton region of interest analyses, where they are providing machine learning backend. So when you upload your images, it's an interface where you can label the images with a set taxonomy. But now, because of the machine learning backend, people are trying, oh, I'm going to do that because then I don't have to develop my own machine learning models. And this has given enough data that currently they're putting together a publication comparing plankton biomass from everywhere around the world, because the users are putting the data in to use the tool. So this kind of an approach would seem to be very nice, to because you're already integrating so many different kinds of data to be able to get other sources like that. We have Mehul was talking about how we have many images of the seafloor, of the midwater, and another approach we have been using is we have a server box that runs its own database, which also has the web server interface. So while you're at sea, you can capture images and pick on points to say this is a squid or whatever. But we provide this box to people who want to use it. And you were saying with your fishermen who might want to go out and do something, if you had tools that they could use, which they use for logging or whatever needs they have. But when they send the box back to you, you then have everything in the format you want already in a database. And they can't afford to buy one of these themselves, perhaps, but they might borrow one, and that would get you data back in this way as well. And we do that successfully with our video analysis annotation system. So that might be something to look at as well. One other thing I was thinking of is this open source image database Squiddle, which we are using, is mostly it's hosted on Amazon Web Services. Most of the funding comes from the Australian government, but the repository for all of your images can remain in your own country, so that you still have control over all of the images, and it just harvests them and the metadata to present as a database where you have just like yours, where you have a whole lot of data all together available, but each of the data providers who are using the tool, so it's a plus for them, they still keep control of their own data. And this kind of a system is also pretty useful, I think. Mehul was talking about optics and the interface with acoustics. And one thing I was thinking of was, for example, with acoustics, you have the SOFAR sonar channel at 1,000 meters depth, where the sound travels further than anywhere else. Optics, you can have similar kinds of things, where if you're looking at, say, laser-based communications between drones or other underwater platforms, there are certain depths, certain times of day, certain seasons, where the laser will penetrate further and carry information a longer distance if you can map those things out in 4 dimensions. And the work that you've already started with your MSP platform there would seem to be very good to integrate those kinds of things as well, especially in tropical areas where the water is clearer and therefore the the laser can penetrate further. Although you were mentioning sediment loads and needing to keep track of those, which I can see, especially around the coast, would be a big problem. We have some of the hardware, the toys that I was talking about before. One of them is a shadowgraph camera system, which Mehul has been developing. And with shadowgraphy, the illumination is a single LED. So it uses not so much power, which means it doesn't heat up as much. So if you're trying to work in the tropics, especially the Red Sea or somewhere with very high temperatures, you can keep the temperatures lower. And it's also very good for imaging in turbid waters. So where normal reflected light camera systems would not be able to get an image that you could tell anything from, the shadowgraph camera can. And it can not only image the organisms, but actually image all of the particles. And you can get a turbidity reading from counting particles and also see what kind of particles they are, if they're flocks or if they're fine clay or if they're something else as well. And we've been developing pipelines to automatically analyze some of this imagery. So some kind of a tie-up along with that kind of technology would also be very interesting, I think. Yeah, just a few thoughts that I thought I would share.
Thank you, Duggal. I think definitely agree with you. But I mean, as I emphasized, it's not limited to just acoustics, and we would now like kind of looking at data fusion, because one single method will never be the best, or will never be the optimum. So we have been, I mean, like we've been doing modeling and simulation using satellite data and then field validation using acoustic data. So those kind of things, I mean, for sediment management and various applications. So definitely it has to be a multidisciplinary effort. And today, and also what you also mentioned, building these tools, like instead of, people putting manual data, it is the system that takes care of all these, concerns of standardization and, those kind of things. That's what Sridhar also mentioned. We are trying to do. But, what you mentioned about the manual work also has an advantage that, everything is hand coded. So it gives a lot of flexibility to our work. I mean, any adaptation that is required. So we have lesser limitation in terms of, or we are far more agile in terms of, accepting new data sets or new aspects to be covered. I mean, Sridhar leads a team of about 10, 12 in-house people, plus, whole lot of, very smart interns who work with us. So, and also what happens is, we are also trying to build a more black box kind of an approach, so that, say, a policymaker who doesn't have so much understanding of the technology doesn't need to bother too much. Because, I mean, you and me are talking about the tech side of it, but there are people who have to use this tech inputs or the data inputs. So, and they cannot be bothered by expecting them to know too much. So how that can be also, so that's also one of the aspects that we are trying to work on. Like, I mean, you talked about SOFA channel. I mean, Sridhar has spent a couple of years to build the underwater channel model. Of course, this is for acoustics, and the tropical waters, the SOFA channel goes right up to 1,500 meters, where in your part of the world it's in a few hundred meters. So so even that is a very important information that your MSP can give you. Where should you deploy? I mean, what depth you should deploy to get better ranges or better data. So those kind of issues are also there. So I mean, there are so many aspects. When more and more people get down to doing this, if we can before that, if we can build the tools that can make the life simple could be also one of the agendas of the work that we are trying to do. So I think I'll stop here, and thank you so much for your very, very insightful comments. And we certainly look forward to working together and taking things forward. So Nishtha, back to you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Dr. Lindsay. I think Sridhar has some comments to make. So Sridhar, quickly from you.
Sorry, I'm aware of the time constraints. I'll keep it quick. Thank you so much, sir. And I think, yes, again, some important points. Just to clarify, this what we have built is dynamic in nature. It's not, the idea is not that it takes a long, I mean, it definitely records the data because we also keep track of historical data. So if you want to see a comparison between, let's say, COVID happened, so you want to see what kind of shipping noise was before COVID and after COVID. And pardon me, I keep talking about noise and acoustics because that is something I know that I will not fluke about. But it's not just me working in the team. We have other researchers, including Shlok, who is good at aquaculture. He's the one who created that APY analysis for shrimp and seaweed farming. We also have Romit, who's good at sediment management. And we also have Catherine, of course, along with other engineers. But yeah, I keep giving examples of that because that's what I know for sure works. But yes, for basically for those aspects, we do keep track of data to basically provide a baseline comparison with what historically things have been and what's a pre-COVID versus post-COVID, what kind of levels are we looking at, how much habitat is going to get impacted because of that, how the migratory patterns have shifted due to, let's say, climate change. So all those kind of things, which is what we are trying to derive from these kind of like to build from what we have. Storage, yes. I mean, right now everything is cloud based. We have already deployed a tool called SRN tool. It's cloud based. The idea is that anyone can use it using handheld devices or computer. It's there in srn.ut.solutions. I'll send a link of that video that we have, product video that we have for that. So yes, everything is cloud based. We have things deployed in AWS as well. I think we have Singapore as a region because it has the highest availability. But yes, sir. But definitely this, I think optics is a very good inspiration for me. I'll definitely look into that part of it. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, Sridhar. Now we will move on to the concluding portion of the webinar. And for that, I invite Ambassador Anup Kumar Mudgal, who's a member of Blue Economy Apex Committee in India, to deliver the closing remarks. Little bit about Ambassador Mudgal. He is a distinguished career diplomat of the 1984 batch, and he retired in May 2016 as India's High Commissioner to Mauritius. During his over 3 decades of service, he held roles both at India's Ministry of External Affairs, overseeing relations with neighboring countries, ASEAN, Russia, and Europe, and in multiple overseeing postings, including Mexico, Peru, Belgium, Germany, Austria, and Mauritius. His domain expertise spans maritime security, ocean economy, blue economy, trade policy, technology transfer, and development diplomacy. Post-retirement, he remains deeply engaged in the strategic initiatives, serving on the FICCI's task force on blue economy and the steering committee on blue economy under PM IST, and delivering guest lectures at premier institutes. Ambassador Mudgal holds a master's and MPhil in plant sciences from the University of Delhi, and he's fluent in English, Hindi, and Spanish. So over to Ambassador Mudgal for his comments.
Thank you, Nishtha. I think the experts have spoken. Yes. Now, somebody talk the language of a layman. Yes. So I will do that job of bringing up the language of the layman. Yes. You see, I've been dealing with issues of blue economy, climate change, generally the sustainable development issues. And there, in fact, we talk about the mismatch between our expectation as human society, our actions, and then its impact on the environment. And you know, there are things which really worry us all. I'm happy today, you know, we are meeting in the context of World Maritime Day. And the theme says our oceans, our obligation, and our opportunity. Yes. Now let me start at the end of this phrase, our opportunity. You know, as a career diplomat, all our life we have been talking about development as part of our interaction all over the world, because development is at the roots of human welfare, which means we need to grow in all aspects of human expectation. And we know that growth would not, or development would not come automatically. It needs resources. And our only source of resources is our motherland, or the Mother Earth, right? So we have been digging those resources from this Mother Earth for translating our dreams into action. But somehow, somewhere down the line, we did not understand what was the reaction of the Mother Earth to what we were doing. Because that language, we did not have the capacity of fully understanding. We were doing something and the Mother Earth was reacting, and we were not able to fully understand the mechanism of the Mother Earth reaction to our actions. As a result, we caused massive damage to the Earth's environment. We damaged the land, water, air, biodiversity, you name it. So much so that when a scientific team came out with what is called the planetary boundaries, because the planet has mechanisms, and those mechanisms are enablers for life on the Earth, including human life. So they came to a conclusion of a sort that they counted at that point of time, there are 9 important planetary boundaries, which included global warming, ocean temperature, acidification, biodiversity, so many things, right? And then recently, I read a report that out of those 9 planetary boundaries, we have already exceeded 7 boundaries. Yes, we have exceeded 7 boundaries. And these are also called the tipping points, which then can undermine the planet's own capacity to manage its own systems. Which means the planet may reach a stage of irreversibility in terms of managing those mechanisms. And then we see the symptoms. And we see the symptoms, for example, when we were talking about economic development as part of blue economy, everybody understood that while we have undergone massive development, but still a substantial part of humanity is still suffering from those gaps, be it poverty, food security, energy security, health issues, education. And as a result, the simple conclusion is that we have to further grow so that we have more resources diverted to those gap areas to overcome those gaps in the human development process. But if we want more growth, we want more resources. Now, the issue is that the land is already completely exhausted of resources, and I'm sure you all know about the Earth's overshoot day. the overshoot day when the Earth's resources are completely exhausted for a particular year. And I was amazed to see that this year, that Earth's overshoot day was somewhere early August, which means, and we have been doing it since 1972-73, which means since 72-73, we have been exceeding the planet's capacity for resources every single year by a period of something about 4 to 5 months every year. So as a result, there is a general expectation that the land is exhausted of resources. Of course, there will be some technological benefit in terms of the tech efficiency of resources. Understand, but it will not be able to give you the kind of resources we need for our future growth. The expectation is in the next 22, 23 years, the global GDP would double from the current level. If the current level is the $115 trillion, you will add another $115 trillion in the next 23 years. That will indicate the magnitude of resources that we need. And the simplistic answer was that already the land is exhausted, but the seas have not exhausted. Let's go to the sea now. Let's go to the ocean. Why can't we go to the ocean? Because we thought, because we did not understand the ocean, or we did not have the technology to harness it, and now we have it, we can go there. Why not? Now, without realizing that while, of course, sea appears to be untouched by actions or misactions, but the oceans are also suffering. The oceans are suffering by way of pollution, by way of acidification, by way of loss of biodiversity, and so many other things. And now, for example, when we talk about the planetary boundaries, I will try to simplify it because I won't go into all aspects of those planetary boundaries. Say, for example, climate change. Now, everybody is saying climate change is an existential threat, right? And I think I have no difficulty agreeing with that. But if climate change is an existential threat, we need to know what are the processes which are causing that climate change. And then what are the main important factors which would either cause it or prevent it? Now, when I look at that, is the ocean not probably the single most important factor? Which, if mismanaged, will cause it, and if managed well, will probably prevent it. Now, I think that is where my starting conversation is. As a consequence of my association with Blue Economy processes, when I spoke to Arnav for the first time, I think some 5-6 years ago, we have to understand, why is the ocean suffering? What ails ocean? And when you look at those reasons, the causes, it is basically the human activity which conflicts with the ocean functioning. Now, these are conflicts. When we talk about ocean activity in terms of economic activity, there are intersectoral conflicts. Energy may conflict with tourism, tourism may conflict with shipping, shipping may conflict with biodiversity. So many things are there. So there are those conflicts. Why the intersectoral conflicts are easier to understand and probably address, I am more worried about the conflict between the human activity and the ocean health. Because that is what we don't see. You see, for example, if a port is resulting in, say, a harm to the coral reef, we can see it. Or if the ships are causing a problem with, say, a pipeline, we can see it. But what we don't see is that how it interacts with the ocean health. And that is where the problem is. So the MSP document, which Catherine has really worked very hard to produce, is trying to highlight these potential conflicts and then trying to spell out, is there a way out where these conflicts could be minimized? Now, that is where, Arnab, your underwater domain awareness becomes important. Because unless we understand the underwater domain, we would not understand the causes for the ocean suffering. And if we don't say that, we would not be able to help the ocean prevent crossing those planetary boundaries. Now, that is where, for example, I heard, I know it's a very complicated thing. Acoustics, for example, is only one tool available to us. But it's not sufficient. It's not enough, because we need to understand, because what's happening underwater has some physical features, chemical features, biological features, and many other features. Now, each feature is so dynamic that it changes with place and time. And that shows the magnitude of that data, which we need to study to come to understand what are the causes of things that we watch or we see. Because those are the symptoms. Now, we are worried about the symptoms, or there are causes for those symptoms. The underlying cause, unless we address the underlying cause, the symptom we won't be able to stop. That is where, in fact, the underwater domain awareness or underwater, that platform which Arnab and others are trying to develop, we will, you rightly mentioned, data in itself is of no use. Fine, it's data. What to do with it? Now, unless that data is integrated into finding a solution to a problem, it's of no use. Now, my worry is that, okay, something has happened and you tell me something has happened. But why it has happened? No, unless we understand why, we can't prevent the same thing from happening tomorrow. And that why is underwater domain awareness. That answer to why will come from underwater domain awareness. I know it's a very complicated, very, very complicated field. But we have to start somewhere. Let's start at maybe more simple parameters of ocean behavior and conflict resolution between the human activity and the ocean health. And in fact, MSP was started as a very simple process, where the intersectoral conflict was basically the objective. But today we are going beyond. It's not intersectoral conflict. It is a conflict of sectors with the ocean health. Now, what I tell my own imagination, in fact, I relate the human health process with the environmental health process. Now, what have we done in case of human health? We have developed markers, which means if something happens, we know that a lot has happened. That something will look very simple, in the sense either a measurement of temperature or blood pressure or sodium or potassium or something else, right? Now we look at something very small as a marker, but we also know that there's something simple as a marker has evolved as a very complicated process. And that process needs to be addressed. And that is something we need to probably look at even in case of environmental health or ocean health for that matter today, right? For example, when you see a particular plankton increasing in density in a particular region, do we know why it's happening? Is it a sign of good news or it's a sign of bad news? If it's a sign of bad news, do we know why the bad news? Can we prevent a disaster from happening rather than analyzing the disaster when it has happened? Yes. So that is the very initial stage. MSP is just a toddler, right? It's just crawling right now. But I'm sure with the technological advancements, MSP will be able to walk, MSP will be able to run, and MSP will pre-warn you of what is happening, which is not visible to an ordinary eye. That is what the ultimate goal of MSP is. Avoid conflicts, mitigate conflicts which are causing the symptoms, and then we are worried about them. So this is what I have in very simple layman's language. Yes, though because of my own science background, I know it's a very complicated thing. But we are talking about acoustics as one tool. We are talking about the DNA fingerprinting of another tool. We can do the chemistry of water. We can do the physical parameters of water. And then can we, I always say that, El Nino, for example. Now, old time when we didn't have any technology, people will look at the color of the water and say El Nino is coming. Yes. Those were the indicators, because with the temperature rising, the composition of the plankton used to change. And with the composition of the plankton changing, the color of the surface water used to change. And with that, they would tell you this year is going to be El Nino. Can we develop such markers, simple markers of complicated processes, and then take preventive action for avoiding the conflict so that it doesn't cross the planetary boundaries? Unfortunately, we have already crossed 7 out of 9. So I think with this, I will stop. I know there's a time limit. I have many stories to tell, but this was the simpler layman language. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate always your vast experience and your understanding of the whole mechanism. Really means a lot. Thank you so much, sir. Google or Mehul, would you like to say something before we close? Any quick comment?
Me first or Dougal? Would you like to go first?
Sorry, I wasn't able to unmute for a second there. Yes, thank you very much for your wide experience and large take on everything that's where we're heading with this kind of a tool, and the good effects it can have on how we can deal with the crisis that the planet is facing is definitely really something we should all keep in mind and keep striving with the work that we're doing. And, thank you very much for those comments, and for everyone at the workshop today. It's been very, very nice, and I've learned a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, from my side as well. Thank you for such a wonderful way of summarizing everything we have been talking about. And World Maritime, it was really very nice layman way of putting. I know you have a science background, but still, it's even difficult for us to put it in such simple words so that everybody can understand. So it was very nice to hear that. And thank you everybody today for arranging this workshop. It was really nice. And yeah, like Dr. Das also said, it's important to build the tools, so we can get more people involved. We can get more people to, because it's such a big, complicated environment that it's impossible for one team or one person to build the whole framework to do this. So I think in the end, it's going to be different groups building things. But as long as, with our new generation of high-speed data sharing, if we can build things separately but combine information so that in the end the analysis can be done together, I think that's something we have to do, rather than trying to do everything as one group. Again, it's going to be the same problem with the size of data, the complexity, the crashing of servers. I think in the end it has to be done by many different groups, different things, but in a way that we agree that we can share the data, in a particular format or particular way. And the analysis tool is something which can build together, so the data from our side and your side can be combined to make meaningful markers or results, as you said. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Any closing remarks from Sir, you, Arnab sir?
No, I think
I have
yes, sir.
already kind of given my opinion. I know to be specific on this issue is not easier, because the complexities are so deep and profound. You touch one end, hundreds of other ends get out of your hand, right? So bringing those threads together, that is why the challenge. The hundreds and thousands of those threads, data threads, and then dealing with them in real time as an advanced warning system for avoiding those conflicts is not going to be easy at all. In fact, let's start simple. Yes, I mentioned once, I remember that was probably early 80s or late 70s. I spoke to a communication expert. He says, Mr. Mudgal, there is no reason that the phones should be wired. They have to be wireless. Because people are mobile, therefore the phone has to be mobile. Yes? And we thought it was an impossible vision. But then a couple of years later, I looked at the first cell phone, which was 2.5 kilos, and was really impossible to manage. But look at today, which means the evolution of technology can solve problems as long as we have the right vision. And I'm sure when it comes to MSP, the vision is right. The technology gap will automatically fill with time. When people see the benefit, they will work to plug those gaps. And as the gaps are plugged, there will be more benefits. It will breed on itself. Yes. So with these words, I think I should close. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mehul. Thank you, Dugal. Nishta, back to you. Close.
Thank you, sir. So as we come to the close of this enlightening webinar, it is my privilege to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the Maritime Research Center and NirDhwani Technology. First and foremost, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the distinguished guests who joined us, and to the speakers, including Dr. Commander Arnab Das, for setting the stage for a thought-provoking introduction to the UDA framework. Catherine J. for her insightful presentation on the perspectives of the marine spatial planning and its role for sustainable blue economy. Mr. Sridhar Prabhuraman for demonstrating how technology and innovation can shape the MSP in the tropical waters. We are equally honored by the reflections shared by our eminent dignitaries, including Dr. Mehul Sangikar and Dr. Dugal Lindsay. Your perspectives have added immense value to today's discourse. A special thanks to Ambassador Anup Mudgal, sir, for his thoughts in the closing remarks section, which has given us clear sense of direction of how to move forward. So on this occasion of World Maritime Day 2025, with the theme, Our Ocean, Our Obligation, Our Opportunity, today's discussion reminds us of the shared responsibility we all carry in managing our ocean sustainably. I would like to acknowledge our organizing team's effort for putting together this webinar. And I would also like to thank the engineering team who has worked effortlessly and tirelessly to put together this tool that the team is working on, which is called the MSP tool. So credit goes to the engineers, including Shubham, Ayush, Shreya, Anchala, Jay. And finally, to our participants who have joined us for your engagement and your questions and the discussions. With this, I once again thank all of you on this amazing occasion of Maritime Day. Thank you and have a wonderful evening ahead. With this, we can close.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Arnav.
Thank you, Shreya and Ayush and backend team for a good job. Thank you.
Thank you so much.